Hey, how you guys doing? For this week's video, we're going to talk about Hackintoshes, among other things. And this came about is because I was watching some other YouTubers, and this is on Snazzy Labs, and I think I watched them before. And some of their claims are a little bit way off, I believe. And this is the two videos I'm actually going to put in the comment section if you want to review them when you come back here to see what I'm talking about. Unfortunately, I can't show any of their videos because I'll get flagged for copyright, so I don't want to do that. The two videos they made is AMD Hack Mac kills the new Mac Pro, and the other one, we ditched Mac Pro for this. So basically, the second video I just talked about is when they reinstalled Windows and put DaVinci Resolve on it. That's what they were trying to do, because the HackPro was only just to show you how it was done. But anyway, we'll get into that. So the claims here, for instance, most of this is going to be on we ditched the Mac Pro for this, and they make a lot of big claims, and one of it is it outperformed the new Mac Pro at half the cost, and they're claiming that it's the performance is they're actually getting 40% more performance out of the AMD Hack Pro that they made, which is kind of funny because they released this video in the 6th of December 2019. I don't believe the 2019 Mac Pro was released until the end of the month, and I believe it was actually built prior, maybe even the month before that. So there's no way to really compare it. How they know it's 40% performance? So first off, let me talk about Hack Pros in general. I don't think Hack Pros are good for production work if you make money at all. Most of the people I've talked about with their Hack Pros is there always ends up being problems sooner or later, especially if they upgrade security updates, and then it usually ends up breaking something. So I'm not really going to go into that exactly, but I just kind of wanted to add that in there. And okay, I already covered that. Now, for one, anytime you claim you can build something at half cost with just much performance. Yes, you can do that, but you have to keep in mind you're making it a kind of a totally wrong comparison. You're comparing a build-it-yourself to an OEM computer. So if you build it yourself, yes, you're going to save on labor costs, and you provide your own support. So really, it should be a build it yourself comparison, or an OEM versus OEM comparison. Another issue that comes up is consumer versus kind of server parts. For instance, usually the Mac Pros will use things like Xeon processors that usually give you access to more memory. In this case, the 29 Mac Pro, you can get up to 1.5 tetrabytes of memory, and usually it gives you more PCI lanes as well, versus AMD Threadripper or whatever. Sometimes they use workstation graphics. The base model new Mac Pro doesn't really use workstation graphics in there, but some of the other ones you can get, I think, are. So once they made the Hack Pro, or the Hack Pro, I guess, they said, well, their videographer editor doesn't use Mac, so they were going to install Windows and put DaVinci Resolve. That's his preference. So that's what they tried to do, and then while they were trying to do it, then all of a sudden they were getting graphic card errors because they were using two used. They didn't buy it brand new, but they had two used Vega 64 GPUs, which is probably why they bought this off of eBay, which probably one of the reasons why it only costs half the amount to build, because you're using used parts. And then I think they also had a network card problem as well. They also said another big issue was running DaVinci Resolve on Windows because of scaling issues. And they kind of blame this on perhaps Windows, maybe? Windows and both DaVinci Resolve, because Windows provides the APIs that they could do proper scaling. So whatever, okay. So then they decide, okay, it's not working well on Windows, so we're going to install Linux. So which is kind of contradicts what they were saying, because if somebody prefers DaVinci Resolve on Windows, then all of a sudden they're skipping to Linux, which is a totally different operating system. And then there's a learning curve and some other things. So, only thing when using DaVinci Resolve in Linux, and I've tried this myself as well, is they only officially support it through 2 distributions of Linux, Ubuntu and CentOS. Now, Ubuntu is a version of Debian, and then CentOS is a version of Red Hat, I believe. It's the server version. So they decided to use Pop OS, which is a different distribution. I'm like, no, don't do that, because it makes it a lot harder to install. So what they basically had to do is hack the installer to get around this, so they can install it on Pop OS, which is a derivative of Debian as well. And anytime you start hacking into the operating system and or the software, then you're going to have issues either installing it or later down the line when you try to upgrade or other things. And they're going to see it here not in the not too far future. Okay, so they finally got what do you call it? DaVinci Resolve installed on Pop OS after some hacking, and then they come to find out when they tried to put in the software license, which is letters and numbers. They tried to type it in there. They find out it wouldn't accept it because it's not an official version of CentOS, which is one of the versions. So then they had to go out and purchase a DaVinci Resolve dongle and permanently install that inside the computer through a USB PCI lane type of thing. So then they finally got it to work. So I don't know. It's a lot of times I just like, anytime I see a video where, you know, where they're kind of dissing Mac Pros or Macs or whatever, and they say they can build at half price and either build a Hackintosh or some other. And in this case, they went some major loopholes just to get DaVinci Resolve and some other things to work. And case in point, I mean, if you're, I don't know, it just slaps my forehead 10,000 times when I see videos like this. Mostly YouTubers, not necessarily people who want to build a Hackintosh or HackPro or whatever, and you know, for their own use or whatever, are fine. But when we have YouTubers do it, say, oh, you can build your own, use, you know, Linux or this over a Mac, and then the reason people buy Macs are for stability. Macs build their own software and operating system around their own hardware. That's how they get so much stability. You can't necessarily say that with Linux and or Windows. It all depends on what hardware you have, and that's why people and serious professionals use Macs in the first place, because the stability is there. And I use DaVinci Resolve on my own Macs, and they're rock solid stability, rather than in trying to hack into you know, the operating system or the application itself, which in the end is always going to have issues. So the comparison, half price, less performance, or more performance at less the cost, really is apples and oranges in a big way. So I kind of wanted to talk about that. Anytime I see videos like this, especially by YouTubers, and I just slap my forehead on that. So, all right, thanks for watching, and see you guys later.